Good afternoon, a very good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to this session of International Business Environment. In our last session, we discussed regarding the approaches to international business and also benefits of international business in macro level for every country's economy and also in micro level for each industries that will go in for international business. Now moving forward, we shall discuss a concept called as global symbiosis. Now, earlier we had a idea or a mindset for every country in the world which used to tell self-sufficiency is all that we had to acquire being as a nation. But over a period of time, this mindset for achieving self-sufficiency as a national goal has given way to attaining synergies from global interdependency. Now, we can note that self-sufficiency and global interdependency are two opposite things. Now, self-sufficiency is a state for every nation in which every nation produces all the goods and necessaries that it needs all by itself and never depends upon any other nation. In global interdependency, what happens is all the nations buy goods from other countries which it cannot produce for itself and sells those products which are best produced in each nation, and because of this interaction there is interdependency between the two. Speaking about synergy, synergy in simple words a state wherein two or more industries, two or more economies or two or more aspects are combined together to take the advantages of each by both and create a wider energy which would be greater than each of the advantage of those who have come to combine together. Okay. Now, in the current times, the countries have realized that the benefits coming from a healthy symbiotic relationship are based on the mutual gains for both the countries or all the countries that go in for this global symbiosis. Now, the goal of self-sufficiency of yesterday or of the traditional times was right in those times, but with the contemporary changes and the sweeping changes in business and society, an order based on synergies out of mutual benefits is more likely being accepted. The low levels of national populations, along with the limited means for maybe communication and transportation in traditional times, encouraged self-sufficiency as a national goal. But now, a faster industrial growth, which is followed by efficient transportation and logistics, and also the development and revolution in information technology, have resulted in a closely knitted world, or what we call as a global village. Now, today, whether we accept the fact or we do not, all the nations depends on each other. Could it be for capital? It could be for technology. It can be for markets and supply. And concomitant with this is a worldwide struggle for markets, fuel, and raw material. Now, the market power of nations have shifted in recent times. The West is no longer a supremely dominant, and the world has acquired something called as multipolar characteristics in market, contrast to or as opposite to the bipolar characteristic that it had in traditional times. For that matter, we can take Russia. Now, Russia has shifted from a centrally planned economy to a more open market based economy. This country continues to derive advantages from the strength of the factors such as natural resources and also very good trained manpower. It continues to be the biggest oil producer till date. For that instance, even China, with the population of over a billion, is getting organized in a very good manner to face the challenges in the emerging world economic order. China has made a conscious transition towards a market based economy. And also, for that matter, a number of less developed countries are building industry that combines significant technology, low cost of labor, and cheap resources to produce maybe the products or services that can be marketed worldwide. Now, in the past few years or a decade, the manufactured exports of all these developed countries have been more than double. Now, the phenomenal growth of information tech and information technology sector in India is one of the best example of how opportunities for India are created as a result of global interdependence. Moving forward, when we have advantages of the international business, definitely there would be the adverse effect of foreign trade. Now, since its inception, it has always been argued that international trade has a very strong backwash effect, especially on the less developed countries. That is to tell, its operations or the benefits of international trade is always biased or is always in favor of the rich and progressive regions or countries, and it always demerits or disfavors the less developed countries. On the other hand, it has also been pointed out by the economists that international trade leads to also the international transfer of income from poor to rich countries. Now, there has been a report from United Nations on human resource indicators. Now, according to this research, it shows the gap has widened between the living standards of people who reside in the rich countries and the poor countries. And this research also states that the gap is being widened more and more from the time of what we call as globalization. But however, it is good to remind that there is always still a lack of empirical evidence to prove that the development of export sector has been at the cost of domestic sector. Now, foreign trade has not always stood in the way of domestic investment, and we should also see to that yes, there are demerits in international trade, but then the adverse effect can always be seen to that has been exaggerated. So, it can be said that in today's environment, globalization, without any doubt, is a reality, and it is also important to accept this globalization in the right perspective instead of nurturing the old protectionist beliefs of the country, because in the base not every country has all the resources that it needs to attain self sufficiency. And also, we should remind that the resources of the nations, or when we tell the resources of the world, is limited. When we try to achieve self-sufficiency, what happens is that maximum utilization of resources can never be possible, and even the economies of scale cannot be achieved for a higher degree. That's why it becomes very important that yeah, though there may be demerits, but the international trade has to be accepted in a right perspective. Right. Moving forward, let us try to
Moving
understand the
forward, let us try to
barriers
understand
in
the barriers in the
let us try to understand the barriers to international trade. Now, despite the difficulties in the transportation, distance, high cost of transportation, diverse language, the difference between the customs, traditions, and national level laws, even the risk and the uncertainties, the problems of exchange control, one of the basic factors that must be taken into account in international business is the export countries' foreign trade regulation. These may sometimes block or hinder the exports to all the countries or some countries. Now, the exporters of each country may be required to follow what we call as long or elaborated and time consuming procedure, including preparation of a numerous or lengthy documents. Now, the immediate effect of such trade regulations, whether in the form of maybe increased custom tariffs or other importing country, the increase gives the domestic producers of the import competing product, are relatively edge that may be sufficient to stimulate or increase domestic sales or to protect their share of market. Now, these trade restrictions or trade barriers have always have direct adverse effect on the countries which goes in for exporting. Now, mainly, these barriers to international trade can be discussed in terms of two. One is tariff barriers and the other one being non-tariff barriers. Now, tariff, whenever we speak regarding tariffs in terms of international trade, it refers to some kind of duty or some kind of tax that would be levied or imposed on the goods which are being traded internationally. That is to tell, the tariffs can be on export or import whenever they cross the national boundaries, which either makes or sells the product, it would be levied on the products. Now, this would directly make the product costlier for the country that is going to buy compared to the product available in the market. Now, this strategy would be taken up with the intention of protecting the domestic country. Now, some of the tariff barriers could be export duties, it could be import duties, it could be transit duties, it could be countervailing or what we call as subsidies, and also anti dumping. Now, speaking about non tariff barrier, a non tariff barrier would be any measure other than the tariff, now which would be raising an attack or which would hinder the free flow of goods in the overseas market. Now, non-tariff barriers can normally be put in the form of prior import deposits. Under prior import deposit, what happens is every importer who is going to buy goods from other countries need to keep some kind of deposits with the authority, or it could be in the form of import quota or licensing or any kind of foreign regulation, exchange formalities, government procurement, trade trading, health and safety measures, channelization of trade, preferential arrangements, it could be trading blocks, technical and administrative regulations, and also economic and political wars. Now, these are some of the few examples among many for the non tariff barriers. Moving forward, in the present day business environment, there is always an increasing movement of goods and services across the nation. And even the firms engaged in only domestic business always needs to be aware of the international business scene. Now, the Indian economy, as is true of the economies of other industrialized nations, is so interactly linked to international economies that even strictly domestic business is affected by what takes place in other countries. It simply tells that in the present days, all the businesses are going for international trade, and the countries have been dependent upon each other in such a way that you as an industry might be one that is following only domestic business, but the economy of the country in which you are situated is so interdependent on other countries that even though you are concerned only about the domestic market, you'll always have to know regarding what is happening in international scenario. Now, although the basic decisions might not change as markets or this organization expand their business from domestic field to the international field, but the environment will and can be definitely different. Okay, so moving forward, let us discuss the modes of entry to international business. Okay. Modes of entry to international business tells what are the different ways in which we as an organization can start doing business outside the domestic or the outside the geographical boundary of our domestic nation and start to build a business in some other country. Now, whenever it comes to the idea of business expansion, the first thing that every organization has in its disposal is what we call as international business. But many factors of this international business will always have to be discovered. Now, there are several ways of entering this global business or what we call as global arena to serve the foreign market that helps the organization in terms of better returns. Now, this can be done by transferring skills and product offering which they acquire from their unique competencies or unique characteristics to the foreign market. Now, some of the major ways of entering foreign market could be licensing, franchising, joint ventures, or a wholly owned subsidiary. So, before understanding the different modes or discussing it, let us see what do we mean by strategic alliances. Now, a strategic alliance is one of the important collaborative and what we call as a partnership agreement by two or more companies with the intention to achieve a set of fixed goals. Now, all these collaborations or alliances can be of many types. It could be of contractual type, it could be of equity forms. Now, these are synergetic deal. That is to tell by combining the benefits of the two, they are going to create something more benefit than each of those could have achieved it separately. Now, these deals where the participating organization of different capabilities, skills, and strength come together to do the alliance. So, we can tell that an alliance is an interfirm collaboration over an agreed economic time and space for the achievement of participating companies' objective. So, definitely it would be an agreement for a time period and what rights and duties are each organization or each party is going to have, what are the duties to be done followed by each, everything would be mentioned before starting this alliance. Now, the partners offer the strategic alliance with maybe resources such as manufacturing capability, it could be products, could be the distribution channel, it could be capital equipment, it could be project funding, knowledge, and also intellectual property. Therefore, this alliance is a collaboration or cooperation which brings in synergy where every partner believes that the profit from the alliance will be more than those from individual work. And it is always good to remember that the alliance usually involves technology transfer and economic specialization and sharing of expenses and risk. Speaking about types of strategic alliance, it could be contractual strategic alliance or it could be other strategic alliance. Speaking about contractual strategic alliance, it could be in the form of one, licensing, second one, franchising, a joint research and development, or it could be in the form of turnkey project. Other than this strategic alliance, it could be in the form of merger and acquisition, it can be in the form of joint venture, a contract manufacturing, a greenfield strategy, and a management contract. So let us try to understand by discussing each one of this individually. The first one is licensing, and it is under the contractual strategic alliance. Okay. Now, by the term licensing, we mean to tell a business or a business module in which the one who has given the license or the licensor gives the right to use maybe the intellectual property, the brand, or produce a company's product to the licensee or the one who is going to buy the license. And this right would be given as against what we call as royalty, or in simple words, the rent which we have to pay for the licensor for using his assets is called as royalty. Now, the licensee company then makes a huge capital investment to commence its operation. That is to tell, the licensor or the one who gives the license will only give the right to produce or use his assets. All the investment on the capital should be borne and made by the licensee himself. Now, the greatest advantage of licensing is that the licensee or the one who buys the license will have all the development cost and the risk associated with launching this foreign operation. Therefore, a licensor will only earn more and more income for himself. Now, when it comes to field of high technology, there are many companies which provide technical know-how through this arrangement. Can be, for example, Ranbaxy Laboratories Limited. Now, this particular company is in search of partners for out licensing the diverse technology that it has, such as maybe in the respiratory field, in the urology field, or in other fields in which it has a very good innovation. However, we should also keep that in mind that sharing technical know-how with foreign companies is and will always be riskier for technology based companies. So let us try to understand what are the advantages of licensing and what are its disadvantages. Now, advantages, definitely it would be for the licensor. It will be, and it has a very low financial cost and also a risk. Now, the licensor can learn about for the potential of foreign market also. And in other words, it helps the licensor to get access or to get direct access to foreign market. Speaking about disadvantages, now foreign market access will always be controlled by the contractee or the licensee. Now, there are also the risk or chances that the one who had bought the licensee may not perform or outlive the expectations of the licensor. Now, by sharing technological know how or the research of the company, there are chances that the licensor would be in the process of creating a future competitor for himself. Moving forward, let us try to understand what do we mean by franchising. Now, when it comes to a business model, a franchising is a thing in which franchisor licenses the method of doing business in which he has experience to a person who is called as franchisee. Now, franchises bear setup fee and ongoing payments so that procedure is finally or financially risk free for the business firm. But the problem with the franchising is that there is always the risk of loss of control over how franchises run their franchise. Now, we can define franchising as a strategy mainly used by service companies. Now, which would be allowing the franchisee to use a business model of the company from whom it has bought the license. It could be process or a brand name for a fee to conduct its business as an independent branch of the parent company. To give the best example, it could be McDonald's, it could be Pizza Hut, it could be KFC. Each of those is a franchise. Now, as in the case of licensing, the franchisor does not and will never bear the development costs and the risk of commencing operations overseas, because such costs are always expected to be borne by the franchisee only. Hence, by using this strategy, a company can quickly mark its presence globally at local cost. Although one of the big disadvantage of this agreement is lack of quality of control, a basic belief of franchising is that the brand name will always indicate its quality to consumer. Now, this is due to geographical distance and increased number of franchises. To overcome this problem, franchisors set up ventures or wholly owned subsidiaries to maintain the standard quality in their products and services. Now, speaking about the advantages and disadvantages, the main advantage of franchising is it is of low risk and low investment. Now, the franchisors have to have all the information regarding the market environment of the host country. The franchisor can always learn from the local market experience of the franchises. The franchises gets the advantage of research and development, and the franchises can also you know escape from the threat of product failure. Along with the advantages that it has, there are some of the disadvantages also. Now, it is always more complicating than the home country franchising whenever it comes in international business. And also, it is tough to control the international franchises. Now, it can, have the risk of reducing the market opportunities for both of them. Now, both the franchisor and the franchisee will be responsible to maintain product quality and also its promotion, because the promotion could be from the franchisor, which will have its own qualities, and if the franchisee cannot live up to the expectation of what is being promoted by the franchisor, then there would always be risk for the organization as a whole. Now, there are also difficulties of leakage of trade secret. So, by discussing this licensing and franchising, somewhere it looks similar. There are chances that it is also confusing, and many think that this franchising and licensing are same. But the fact is that they both are different. Only the advantages of franchising are similar to those of licensing. But the first and the foremost difference between the licensing and franchising are that licensing is mainly associated with the production and marketing of goods, while franchising is related to the service business. So becomes important that we understand the difference between licensing and franchising. Therefore, a clear cut line has to be drawn between both licensing and franchising. Now, in the base, the meaning itself has a difference among the two. Now, licensing is an agreement in which a company, or what we call as licensor, will be selling the right to use his assets for royalty, or in simple words, rent. But when it comes to franchising is an agreement in which the franchisor allows the franchisee to use his business model. It could be brand name or it could be the process for a fees. And the franchisee would be doing business in form of an independent branch of the parent company. Now, speaking about the laws that under which these two comes. Now, licensing comes under contract law and the franchising comes under company law, or as the case may be in different countries. Speaking about the registration, there is no necessary that licensing is registered, but for a franchising, it is mandatory to be registered. Speaking about training and support, the licensor will not provide any kind of training or support but the franchisee would be providing some kind of training and support. Now, the licensor will have and has full control on the use of intellectual property by the licensee, but has no control over the licensee's business. However, a franchisor exerts considerable control over franchisee's business and also on the process. In licensing, it so happens that there is a one-time transfer of property or rights, but in franchising, it involves the ongoing assistance to the franchisor. Speaking about fee structure, under licensing, it is always negotiable, and conversely, under franchising, it would be a standard fee structure. That is to tell, under licensing, what happens is each licensee that is going to buy the license from the licensor, the fee structure would be based on their contract. But under franchising, what happens is that they would have given license to many of the franchises, and the fee that are to be paid by the franchisee would always be a fixed one or a standard one to which they buy it. So speaking about one more type that we have under contractual strategic alliance is joint research and development. Under this, what happens is the research and development fact or the part of two or more business organizations would come together. Now, it is an agreement in a systematic activity combining both basic and applied research, and it would be aimed to find out solutions to problems, or also it could be for creating new goods or knowledge. Now, under such strategic alliances, it will always be based around research and development, where two or more business choose to combine their technological knowledge to provide new and innovative products. So, there is one more under contractual strategic alliance, which we call as turnkey project. Let us discuss regarding the turnkey project in detail in our coming session.